Hey guys, welcome back to Games of War. Today's episode is all about Dreamcast games on a budget. Now for the most part, prices of retro games are skyrocketing across the board, but it's good to know that on the Dreamcast, there's still a great number of gems that are very affordable. That's what this episode is all about today, is focusing on some of my favorite gems in the system that are still very much affordable. Thanks for watching, I hope you guys enjoy. Starting things off, we have Four Wheel Thunder from Midway. Now, Four Wheel Thunder is a part of the Hydro and Arctic Thunder family of games. However, Four Wheel Thunder doesn't get nearly the recognition that the other two games do. And I can't understand why. It's a great racing game. Now, this wasn't always intended to be a Thunder-style racing game. Towards the end of the development cycle, they decided to add the Thunder branding and incorporate the boosting mechanics of the previous games. Now, that does mean that the tracks are not nearly as over-the-top and flashy as Hydro Thunder, but they're still very competent racing courses. There's over 24 in total. Some of them are indoor, some of them are outdoor. Now the outdoor tracks are huge, sprawling racing environments with multiple hidden shortcuts, all kinds of boosts hidden in locations. It's a very challenging racing game. The computer is punishingly difficult. You're going to have to grab all the boosts to keep top speed going at all times. There's a two-player split screen mode for racing with your buddies. And there's a lot of different vehicles to choose from. You've got like 4x4s, you've got racing buggies, you've got racing trucks. A real nice variation in selectable racing vehicles. The tracks are awesomely detailed, it's got a really smooth frame rate, and the game is just a lot of fun. Overall, this game doesn't deserve to be forgotten. It deserves to be mentioned just as much as Hydro Thunder and Arctic Thunder, and it's a real racing gem on the Dreamcast. Next up on the Dreamcast, we've got an action RPG that literally came out of nowhere for me. I wasn't anticipating this game by any means. I hadn't even heard of it until I was flipping through an issue of EGM or GamePro, and it said this game is out in store shelves. So I went and picked it up without doing any previous research or anything like that, and I was pleasantly surprised by Silver. Now it's an action RPG that's a port of a PC game that came out back in '99 or 2000. Now the game uses fixed camera angles, so it's like kind of static backgrounds, and the view is pulled way back, almost too far back sometimes. Characters can appear very small on the screen, but it also adds to the game's beauty. There are some just gorgeous static scenes going on. Artwork is really nicely detailed, everything is drawn well. And the game has full voice acting, it's got an awesome story. As it starts off, all of the women are being kidnapped and taken to the king. He has this choice over the women in the land. And of course, this upsets your main character David as his wife is taken away from him, leaving David and his grandfather to try to battle and win her back. Now it's going to take you across vast lands, all very different from the next. There's a lot of death and intrigue and betrayal in the storyline, and the voice acting is very well done. Overall, this game looks kind of like a PC game, but it also looks very much at home on the Dreamcast. That battle system is all action-based, so you're going to be mashing buttons, performing different kinds of combination strikes. A very enjoyable battle system, and overall the game was a breath of fresh air and a very pleasant surprise. I like RPGs a lot, and this was a great action RPG. It's not talked about very much at all in the Dreamcast, but it's definitely a game that is worth your time, and it's not going to cost you a lot of money to obtain it, so it's definitely recommended. Now next up we have Red Dog, and this is a game that I was looking forward to for quite some time. I had been reading up on it, hyping myself up for it, and it didn't disappoint. Now the game has you controlling a small, almost lunar, like a moon buggy of sorts, very reminiscent of Blaster Master vehicle on the NES. It controls very well. Just watching the thing move around the environments, suspension, reacting to the land underneath it is just a sight to behold, in my opinion. The shooting controls do require some time getting used to. They're automatically inverted, so you might have to get used to that if that's your playing style. But the buggy can shoot individual shots. It can also lock on for a laser attack. Missiles, you've got a shield. There are 6 huge single-player missions. The maps are pretty detailed, pretty big, lots to explore, lots of different enemy types to take down. There's a storyline going on in the background. It's not the most interesting stuff, but it does keep you playing. And this has got a huge multiplayer component to it as well. There's 4-player split screen, there's 2-player, lots of cool multiplayer modes. Designed for back when games multiplayer was just sitting at home with a room full of buddies, grabbing 4 controllers and all playing together. Red Dog is a very attractive game on the Dreamcast. It looks very well, everything animates smoothly, and overall I just really enjoyed my time with Red Dog. I really enjoyed controlling the little lunar buggy. I think it's an awesome machine to use, great firepower, awesome power sliding and hovering abilities. Red Dog on the Dreamcast is definitely cheap and highly recommended. we have Death Crimson OX, and this is kind of like a love letter to Sega's House of the Dead series. It's a light gun game on rails, very similar to House of the Dead, but you can't use a light gun. And that's going to turn a lot of people off, but if you're willing to stick with it, you'll find the game controls very well with the standard Dreamcast analog stick. It's very responsive, you can set up the crosshair speed and adjust things to your liking. And the shooting action is very satisfying. These bullets do damage, you can see the enemies taking damage from these bullets, and it all works very well. It's very responsive, the hit detection and collision detection is spot on, and it's just very satisfying to shoot these enemies. Now alongside the shooting action, you've got one of the most cheesy stories I've heard this side of House of the Dead. Some pathetic voice acting in there, but that kind of adds to the overall B-style charm to the game. I find it very enjoyable. It's a great game for light gun fans that like playing light gun games without the light gun. Works very well with the standard controller, as said previously, and I think you'll enjoy it if you're willing to give it a chance. It's cheap, and Dreamcast owners would definitely do well to pick it up. It's really fun, it's cheesy. If you like House of the Dead, definitely give Death Crimson OX a chance. And finally, developed and published by Atlas for the Dreamcast, we have Mach and X. And this is a really cool first-person perspective hack-and-slash game with a really weird story that I understand was toned down heavily from its Japanese counterpart. This Mach and X is a genetically engineered sword capable of taking over people's bodies, which is a main hook of the game called brainjacking. You're able to play as different characters throughout the campaign. You start off in a science laboratory that has been overrun, and you bond the Mach and X with this girl, and she's the first character you play as. And the gameplay mechanics are really cool in this game. You're able to lock onto enemies, you're able to strafe around them, hack and slash, charge up special attacks. Each character you brainjack has their own set of combos, and you're able to also jump over the enemies, coming up from behind and slashing them from the back. Everything works really well in Mach and X. The frame rate is super smooth, 60 frames per second, making for a very strong visual presentation on the Dreamcast. A great Japanesey game with excellent gameplay. The story is somewhat hard to follow along with. Although it is interesting, the voice acting is pretty well done for a game of this time. Atlas, you can definitely tell their influence in this game. It's a first-person game, which I normally don't gravitate towards, but when it's done this well with hack-and-slash elements, you have a winner with Mach and X. There's also many other great affordable gems in the Dreamcast. Titles like Carrier, great survival horror game, Illbleed, another one. My personal favorite, Sword of the Berserk Guts Rage, an excellent action beat-em-up. Max Steel, another great beat-em-up. There's so many great affordable gems in the Dreamcast. It's almost criminal that the system didn't live longer. It's unfortunate that Sega at that point in the game had just run out of money. The Dreamcast still lives on to this day with games being made for it, and as long as you keep supporting the Dreamcast, it will keep supporting you. I want to thank you guys for watching, and always remember that Games of War is absolutely nothing without you.